What happens when a good deed turns into a nightmare on a Baltimore street? You won't believe the moment that made an entire city stop and watch. The afternoon sun had that stubborn glow, like it refused to admit the day was almost over. Baltimore's streets were buzzing with the usual noise: cars honking, kids playing basketball on cracked pavement, and the faint hum of someone blasting old-school R&B from a porch speaker. Marcus Evans loved this time of day, those last golden hours when the city looked softer, almost forgiving. He parked his worn-out Dodge Charger in front of his mama's house, killed the engine, and sat for a second. On the passenger seat was a neatly packed brown grocery bag: bread, eggs, milk, and Miss Johnson's favorite, those butter cookies in the blue tin. The old lady couldn't make it to the store anymore, not with her hip surgery, so Marcus volunteered. It wasn't a big deal to him. For Miss Johnson, though, it meant the world. He grabbed the bag, slung his phone into his back pocket, and stepped out. The air smelled like summer heat and exhaust fumes, with a little hint of barbecue from somewhere down the block. Marcus smiled. This was home. It wasn't perfect. Hell, it was far from perfect. But it was his. As he walked, his phone buzzed. A text from his daughter, Kayla. "Daddy, don't forget my science project is due tomorrow. Love you." Marcus chuckled under his breath. Kayla was 8 going on 18, always reminding him like he didn't have her schedule memorized better than his own. He tapped back. "I got you, baby girl. Proud of you." That was Marcus. Steady, reliable, the kind of man who didn't let people down. Even when life had done its best to grind him down, he kept showing up. For his daughter, for his mama, for Miss Johnson, for everybody who needed him. But that's the funny thing about life. It never warns you when the storm's about to hit. He was 2 blocks from Miss Johnson's house when he heard it. That low growl of a police engine idling behind him. It's a sound you don't mistake. Not when you've lived your whole life with the weight of it pressed against your spine. Marcus kept walking. Slow, calm, like every fiber in his body wasn't screaming, "Don't turn around. Don't give them a reason." Then came the voice. Sharp, cold, like it had been practicing cruelty in the mirror all morning. "Hey, you! Stop right there!" Marcus froze. The grocery bag tilted in his hand, the milk jug inside clinking against the bread loaf. He turned, slow and measured, like a man moving through wet cement. The cop stood about 15 feet away, tall and broad, his white shirt crisp against his tan skin, mirrored sunglasses hiding whatever he thought passed for eyes. One hand rested casually on his belt, the other curled like it was itching for a fight. Marcus raised his hands slightly, the bag dangling. "Afternoon, officer. Everything okay?" The cop's lips twitched, almost like he was trying to smile but forgot how. "You tell me, what are you doing in this neighborhood?" Marcus blinked. What was he doing in this neighborhood? He lived here, grew up here. But he knew better than to say that with the heat already rolling off this man like a summer blaze. "Just picking up groceries for my neighbor," Marcus said, his voice steady, polite, the kind of tone his mama drilled into him since he was 12. The officer stepped closer, boots crunching against the asphalt like they owned it. His gaze raked Marcus from head to toe. "Groceries, huh?" He pointed at the bag. "Mind if I check that?" Marcus bit down on the laugh crawling up his throat. Check it for what? Expired milk? Contraband bread? But he didn't say that. Instead, he nodded and placed the bag on the hood of the squad car that had crept up behind the cop like a silent accomplice. The officer started pulling things out: milk, bread, cookies, holding each like it was evidence in a murder trial. No receipt? He asked, tilting his head. In the bag, bottom left corner, Marcus replied. The cop didn't even look, just smirked like Marcus had told him the funniest joke in the world. You think I'm stupid? Marcus felt the heat rise in his chest. He kept his face calm, his voice even. No, sir. I just said, hands on the car, the officer snapped, his voice cutting through the heavy air like a blade. It was loud. Loud enough for the two ladies across the street to stop watering their plants and stare. Loud enough for Marcus's pride to start crumbling like old brick. Marcus hesitated, just for a second. That was all it took. The cop took a step forward, his hand brushing the holster on his hip. Now. So Marcus did it. He laid his palms on the hot metal, felt the sting crawl up his skin, and thought, so this is what doing good gets you. This right here. And as he stood there, the groceries rolling into the gutter, bread soaking up muddy water, Marcus swallowed hard and prayed under his breath. Lord, give me strength not to lose it. He didn't know it yet. But that prayer? It was about to be tested in ways he never imagined. The metal of the squad car burned against Marcus's palms. It wasn't just hot. It was searing, like the hood was trying to brand him guilty. Sweat slid down his temple and into the corner of his eye, stinging like the truth he didn't want to face. He had no control here. None. Behind him, the officer's boots clicked on the pavement like a metronome of authority. Slow, deliberate. Each step said, I own this moment. And you? You're just scenery. Spread your feet, the cop barked. Marcus did as told, jaw tight, the muscles in his neck pulling like cables. He could feel the stares now, those two women across the street, one clutching her phone, pretending to scroll but her thumb frozen mid-screen. A man on his porch leaned forward, elbows on his knees, like he was watching the evening news live. Check his pockets, the officer muttered, and that's when Marcus realized another presence, another shadow sliding into the periphery. A second cop, younger, leaner, face pale like fresh chalk, with a nervous twitch in his jaw. Sir, Marcus said carefully, turning his head just enough to catch the younger one's eye. You got a name? The rookie hesitated, glancing at his partner. Officer Lane, he muttered. Marcus gave a humorless chuckle. Well, Officer Lane, I hope your mama raised you better than this. The older cop snorted. Save the speeches. He shoved Marcus harder against the car, his breath hot against Marcus's ear. You got ID? In my back pocket, Marcus replied, voice flat but steady. The rookie reached for it, fumbling like he'd never done this before. His fingers brushed Marcus's wallet, pulled it free, and handed it over. The older cop snatched it without looking, flipping it open like it owed him money. Marcus Evans, he read aloud, slow and mocking, like each syllable was a personal insult. 38. Lives. Right around the corner. He paused, smirk curling his lips. Funny. Don't see your name on any deed out here. Marcus clenched his teeth. He wanted to say, that's because I rent. Genius. But he swallowed it. Because words had weight here, and the wrong one could crush him. The street was alive now. More faces, curtains twitching, doors cracking open just enough for eyes to peek through. Marcus could feel the hum of whispers crawling down his spine. Problem, officer? Someone called from across the road. A man in a red ball cap, phone in hand, already recording. The cop turned, jaw tight. Mind your business. But it was too late. The lens had found its target. Empty his bag, the officer ordered. Marcus's head jerked toward the hood where his groceries were scattered like debris from a crash. You already went through it, he said, voice calm but laced with steel. The cop stepped in front of him, close enough for Marcus to smell the bitter tang of coffee on his breath. "You got something to hide, Evans?" Marcus locked eyes with the mirrored shades. All he saw was his own reflection, distorted, small, trapped in a world where truth didn't matter. "No," he said softly, "but I got something to protect." The cop sneered. "And what's that?" Marcus didn't answer. Not because he couldn't, but because every muscle in his body was screaming, "Don't." Then came the sound, the one that changes everything. A voice, sharp and clear, slicing through the heavy air like a blade. "I got this on video!" Every head turned. Across the street, a woman stood on her porch, phone held high like a sword of justice. Her voice rang with the kind of fury only truth can give. "Y'all see this? This man ain't do nothing. Nothing." The cop stiffened. His jaw worked like a machine grinding gears. "Put that phone down," he barked. The woman laughed, a short, harsh sound that cracked the moment wide open. "Boy, you think this 1950? You think you scare me? This is going live." And just like that, the world shifted. Because now it wasn't just two cops and one man on a hot Baltimore street. It was an audience, digital, infinite, hungry for justice. The older cop grabbed Marcus's arm, yanking him off the hood. Hard. Hard enough for the skin on Marcus's palms to scrape against the blistering metal. "You think this is a game?" he hissed. Marcus stumbled but caught himself, his voice low, simmering with the heat of 1,000 suns. "I think you just messed up," he said. The rookie froze, eyes darting between his partner and the glowing phone screens multiplying like fireflies in the dusk. And that's when the first siren wailed in the distance. Not from them, but from somewhere beyond, growing louder by the second. The sound curled around the block like smoke, thick and suffocating. Marcus felt his heart slam against his ribs, not from fear, not anymore, from something else, something bigger. Because storms don't just roll in, they announce themselves. The siren's wail sliced through the sticky evening air like a knife, curling around every cracked brick and chain-link fence on that street. Marcus didn't move, couldn't. His feet felt like they'd been bolted to the asphalt, his hands hanging loose at his sides. Not fear this time, not even anger. Something colder, sharper. The kind of stillness that comes right before glass shatters. The older cop, Officer Hardjaw, as Marcus had already renamed him in his head, tightened his grip on Marcus's arm. His fingers dug in like roots trying to hold ground in a storm. "You're coming with me," he hissed, voice thick with rage and something else, panic. Because he heard it too. That siren. That echo of consequences speeding closer by the second. Marcus tilted his head, slow and deliberate, until his eyes met the mirrored lenses again. His voice was calm, almost casual, but laced with enough steel to cut through bone. "On what charge?" The cop's lip curled like Marcus had spit in his face. "Obstruction. Resisting. Take your pick." Marcus let out a low laugh. Not loud, not defiant, just tired. Tired of playing a game he never signed up for. "Resisting what?" "Gravity." The rookie, Officer Lane, shifted his weight, eyes darting from his partner to the crowd that was no longer just a couple of nosy neighbors. It was a wave now. Faces glowing blue from phone screens. Voices whispering, buzzing, rising like smoke before a fire. And in the middle of it all, the woman with the phone still held high, her voice cutting through the hum like a blade. "Smile for the camera, baby! The whole world watching." The siren grew louder, closer, until finally the second cruiser swung around the corner, tires screeching, red and blue lights painting the street in violent flashes. The crowd shifted, murmurs swelling into words. "More cops?" someone muttered. "Nah, that ain't backup," another voice said. "That's internal affairs." The second car skidded to a stop, and out stepped two officers in plain clothes. One tall, dark-skinned, eyes sharp as broken glass. The other short, stocky, with a face that looked like it had seen every lie twice. They walked like men who didn't need to raise their voices to own the room. Or, in this case, the block. The older cop straightened, his grip on Marcus loosening just a fraction. "Evening," he said, tone sugar-slick and fake as a politician's smile. "Just handling a situation." The tall officer tilted his head, slow, like a predator circling prey. His voice was calm, almost lazy, but it carried the weight of a gavel. "Yeah? Funny, because what I'm seeing looks like a lawsuit waiting to happen." The crowd erupted, shouts, laughter, the electric crackle of vindication in the air. Marcus didn't move, didn't smile. But inside? Inside, he felt that first spark, the one that says, maybe, just maybe. "Turn him loose," the tall officer said. "No debate, no room for interpretation." Hardjaw hesitated, his jaw working like a machine grinding rusted gears. But then he did it, snapped his hand back like Marcus's arm had burned him. Marcus stepped forward, slow and steady, like a man who'd just walked through fire and didn't mind the smoke. "Everything all right here, Mr. Evans?" the tall officer asked, his voice cutting clean through the chaos. Marcus met his gaze, then glanced at the sea of glowing screens, the cameras still rolling, the world still watching. He thought of Miss Johnson, probably sitting by her window, wondering why her groceries hadn't come yet. He thought of Kayla and her volcano project. And then, he said, clear and loud enough for every mic and every ear, "Not yet." "But it will be." The cop's face. Oh, you should have seen it. Hardjaw looked like someone had ripped the last page out of his favorite book. All those chapters of control? Gone. Just like that. The tall officer turned to him, voice dropping an octave. "Badge and gun. Now." The gasp that rolled through that crowd could have blown the clouds off the sky. Phones zoomed in. Someone whispered, "Oh, this going viral tonight." Hardjaw's hand trembled as he unclipped his holster, slid the weapon free, and placed it on the hood, the same hood where Marcus's hands had burned just minutes ago. Then came the badge, cold and small and powerless now. Marcus didn't gloat, didn't cheer. He just stood there, the weight in his chest lifting slow, like a storm cloud breaking apart. The tall officer nodded at him. "You want to make a statement?" Marcus looked at the cameras, the faces, the world behind those glowing screens. Then he shook his head. "Already did," he said, voice soft but sharp as a blade. "Because sometimes the loudest words are the ones you don't have to repeat."